Welcome back to the Fulfilled Female Entrepreneur Podcast. It's your host, Cassandra Rosa, and the mission of this podcast is to help you to create a more fulfilling life and business. I'm so excited to have Whitney Baker here today, and she's going to be talking about how to be more present and how that's actually a form of stress relief. I'm really excited to introduce you to Whitney. She founded her company, Electric Ideas, with the mission to light women up with a new sense of possibility. She's a certified meditation teacher and women's guide. She also hosts the Electric Ideas podcast, ranked among the top 5% of downloaded podcasts globally, where she explores empowering topics in the areas of personal growth, spiritual development, creativity, and mind-body wellness. Through her masterminds and workshops, she helps women, particularly those that identify as caregivers, reduce stress, reclaim their sense of self, and show up more intentionally. She is gifting all you beautiful listeners this meditation called Show Up as Your Best Self, and you can look at all the beautiful ways to connect with her in the show notes. I love that. I love the alignment between us, and I'm so lucky and so grateful to have been featured on your podcast.
I love it too, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I always love to ask all the listeners what fulfillment means to you and what's the most fulfilling part of your work?
What a beautiful question and way to start. I think at this age, fulfillment for me is having clarity on my gifts in life and feeling like I'm doing my best to share them in the world. And I would add that it's feeling like I'm living my day-to-day life on purpose instead of default.
Can you share more about what you mean living on purpose instead of default? Because I think that concept is like really important to hear.
Absolutely. And I realized you have a second part of your question with clients too. So it's of my favorite part. So that actually can kind of go in tandem. So I think especially in our digital world, modern age, so many women too are just expected to carry the weight of jobs, community, family, everything on their shoulders. And it's easy to get swept into this water hose of outside demands and even other people's needs and forget that we get to choose how our life looks. And I think there's a lot more choice than we give ourselves credit for.
Yes, I think that that's really important, especially as women. Like, we're so giving, and moms. I'm not a mom yet, but all the moms in my life, right? Like, we're almost put on a pedestal for moms for being so selfless in life, right? And your whole life is dictated by other people. And I think coaches, healers, entrepreneurs, and this work that we do, that can kind of happen too, that we can kind of take a back seat. So I love that you're talking about, taking that ownership of your life, and we are the creators and taking that empowering approach. And within your work and making the impact, what's the most fulfilling part of that?
Well, just to tie into what you said, it's interesting whether it's culturally from how we were brought up, myriad ways women are celebrated for being overgiving, for wearing busyness like a badge of honor. And so many women who are caregivers come into my group programs and they realize they can't remember the last time they actually sat in silence. Meditation is one um, practice we explore in the group container. And for many of them, it just feels foreign. And they start to realize they have so much wisdom inside of them about what would make their life feel more energizing, more peaceful, and what they can do right now without changing their entire life to tiptoe back to reclaiming that sense of self. But they just haven't really given themselves space to listen. So seeing these women just come together in a sacred container and have these aha moments and share, it's really a blessing.
Yeah, I can totally resonate. That's how I kind of answer that question as well. Those aha moments and seeing that transformation. And I can only imagine for you, like when people that are caregivers create that sense of self, seeing that depth and them create that space and that presence for themselves must be really remarkable to see. And I would love to hear more about your journey. What led you to be so passionate about the people that you serve? And how did you cultivating more presence in your life help relieve all the stress that you were experiencing?
Hmm. So many years ago, I had gotten onto a trajectory of life where I had abandoned many pieces of myself. I think I was born with this spiritual curiosity and connection to that, but along the lines of falling into what looked like a glassy job. I was a creative director at a global marketing agency. And if you looked at my job on paper and saw what I was doing, most people had this reaction of, cool. And so I was going with it, going with it. But when I had two little girls who happened to be 14 months apart, it kind of upended everything. And I had a knowing more than ever that I was not in the right place. And I also had kind of the classic tale of burnout. I was trying to be everything to everybody. And in that process, I really was giving a watered down version of myself to my work and to my family. And so I finally had the courage to quit and pivot. And during that time, I reclaimed meditation, and it became such a powerful tool and an important tool to help me slow down and get clarity on what I wanted to call in and be able to move forward in my life, that I knew it was going to someday be a tool that I'd want to share.
I love that. Yeah, meditation definitely did that for me too, in the sense of cultivating more of that presence and creating that transformation for me. When I was working, 6 days a week, building a business in so many courses, there had to be some sort of coming home, some form of presence. And I know I was resistant to meditation in the beginning, but the more that I leaned into it, the more that transformation was able to take place. So, in terms of that stage in your life of having this perfect career, as people would say, and having kids 14 months apart, like I can only imagine how full life was for you there. And I commend you for being a super mom of being able to balance that all. But what did that look like in terms of the way that you were viewing time and the way that you were living? Did you feel like you were caught up really in the past? Were you caught up in the future? Like, what did your relationship with presence look like in that time?
Ah, such a good question, because it even though I've really forgiven that version of myself, it makes my heart ache for what I probably missed and didn't even know I missed. With time, I've realized that my nervous system was just throwing amok, and I was living in constant time scarcity mode, which is a horrible feeling. Had anxiety, and I felt like my whole life was a rush to get out the door, a rush to get home, rush to get a deadline. And eventually it just caught up with me. And so, again, I think what happened for me is, after having children, since I was working in an extremely competitive industry, I always felt like I wanted to maintain an identity outside of motherhood. And so I think I overworked to overprove that I was still had it. And I was also feeling guilty about what missing my children when I was at work. So I was probably trying to overdo things to compensate for that. And it just created a ripple throughout how I was feeling and my family. And I just wish I could go back in time. I wish I would have had the tools I have now at that time in my life. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping women and hopefully catching them and supporting them, if they're feeling that way, which is super common.
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting the nail on the head that it is common. And I think in a world and a society that's so rooted in scarcity, that time of not having enough time in life, I think is so relatable. Whether you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, just balancing all the aspects of life right now and having that weight on our shoulders of always being in a rush and always having a place to go and always having something to check off your checklist. That was something that was really ingrained in me too, just kind of being a high achiever, just, going back to school of wanting to get good grades and wanting to excel and wanting to be a leader, always rushing and always looking for the next thing that I wanted to achieve and looking for the next thing I was going to check off of my to do list. Right. And for me, like you, it kind of presented this sense of always anxiety and always unsettled and always like antsy almost. Right. And I guess that now I know that that's deeply connected to the nervous system. Um, and I think it's amazing that these types of conversations are happening now so that people don't feel alone and having an understanding of what that does to the body and to the psyche and how it's all connected to burnout. So I love that you're sharing this in your perspective as a mom. And you said something really interesting I would love to know more about. You're saying, I wish that I had different tools at that time. What have been the most remarkable tools for you to cultivate more presence in your life? And how does that affect your nervous system? How does that affect the way that you have been showing up lately?
Mm. So I will share that during the time between quitting my job and stepping into my role as entrepreneur and really embracing it and feeling comfortable and being visible, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have gone through that. Emotional freedom technique was something that I had never experienced, and that was helpful for me in terms of releasing some of these long held beliefs about myself and to kind of settle down my nervous system and open up to what's next. But I really have to say, just the practice of meditation and mindfulness and really having a complete shift in my understanding of doing less so that I can do more, so I can be more creative, so I can really deeply enjoy more of my life and contribute at a higher level in everything I do is what impacted me the most. And I feel like everything I teach kind of stems from that. I think in my experience and what I share with women, there has to be this critical moment of just slowing the roll. And I'm telling you, this is not something that always happens overnight. I mean, it took me years of unraveling to realize how much I was on kind of that hamster wheel of do productivity. We're talking years to kind of have that hindsight. But I feel like women can start inviting that slowness into their lives day to day more, and we can talk about that. So, slowing down and then intentionally connecting with yourself. I've always been a journaler and a writer and had little notebooks and paper, even when I was a little girl. And that's another thing that just I was fried. I was working in a creative industry. And so, writing in any capacity in the evening or outside of work just didn't sound good to me. I just was drained and burnt out. So, actually getting back to my creative writing as just a fun form of a piece of who I am, as well as my journal writing for self exploration, was an empowering practice and something that I also work with clients on. So, I think slowing down, creating space to tap into your inner wisdom, and then using a journal to tap into your inner knowledge. It's kind of the arc for me.
Yeah, no, I love that. Those are such powerful tools I've used for myself and that have been so remarkable. And there's so much I want to unpack about what you just said, but I want to start with emotional freedom technique. For those that are not familiar with that, can you explain a little bit more of what it is and how that helped you transform?
Sure. It's a technique that's also called tapping. And I'm not a practitioner, so I can only speak from the experience of me being practicing it. So I think the idea is that as you are exploring certain feelings or emotions, you can also be tapping on meridians in your body that kind of help you have that mind body connection and release things. And I don't know if that's the most articulate way of explaining it to me, but what I will say is it was a different type of way to get in touch with patterns that I didn't realize I was holding in my body and in how I was showing up and stepping into my business. And so it was just a really unique way to have clarity and then feel almost a physical release. Like I was like tapping through it and kind of like letting it go. That was
Yeah.
my experience.
No, I love that. I think that that's really powerful to highlight that as much as emotions, they're feelings. I think even though it's a feeling, we can often get disconnected from it actually affecting our body and how there that pattern of thought and that pattern of emotion can really cause us to have like stuck energy in the body and it can affect our physical vessel. So I think it's really powerful. And the times that I've used it, I even used it yesterday in a session. It's a really powerful technique. And something else that you were talking about was journaling. For someone that is experiencing a lot of stress in their life and they're on the hamster wheel, go, 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 energizer bunny mode. What would you say are some journal prompts that you would recommend to start to help them cultivate some awareness and get more in the present?
Hmm. Well, I would start by first reminding these women that if they're in this go overachieving mode, that the journal gets to be for them, by them, for them. And they're not writing to document something they feel like they should capture about their day or they should capture about their children. It doesn't need to make sense to anybody. And they can burn the pages when they're done if they want to. So, first, just giving that permission. I think sometimes that woman almost needs a release valve. And I think that they could journal write as just almost like I call it the puke on the page and just a release so that they're able to let go of that energy instead of doing what I call burning the village. You know, we all know when we're at that moment. And I think having tools that help us really discharge stress is what it is in my mind. And just knowing that we can be our worst version of ourselves on the page. And then just, I like the almost ceremonially, maybe you burn it, maybe you rip it up, maybe you don't want to clog up your toilet, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be a great place to start. And then I think exploring the role, asking yourself, what role am I playing in my current life that's adding to my stress? I think it's really easy for women to get into victim mode and act like life is just happening. And oftentimes we are overscheduling. We're not giving ourselves any boundaries and we're expecting the world of ourselves. And then we're just not able to operate in a way that feels sustainable or fulfilling. And we wonder why. I think we need to explore where we're complicit in that operation.
Yes. I think that that's a wonderful way to kind of take back your power in a way when we're in victim mode and we're falling victim to all the outside stresses. We can get in the blame game of, hey, this is causing me stress. It's this job, it's this coworker, it's my spouse, whatever it is. So really seeing how you can take kind of responsibility and ownership from that, I think is a really powerful place to start to be able to shift it on all levels. And now that you've applied these techniques, right? You've done more journaling, you're doing emotional freedom technique, you're using all of these beautiful tools that you had mentioned here today. What is the transformation been for you? How do you find that your life has changed by cultivating more presence in your life?
Hmm. I'll be honest, some days I feel like I'm living in a different universe now in a good way. I think I try to be an embodied leader, so I try to really practice everything and trust that instead of feeling like I have to just like teach as long as I'm doing my part, it shows.
Mhm.
So, and don't get me wrong, it's always a practice. I think we all always have to recognize our humanness and that we're going to fall back into outdated patterns and versions of ourselves and give ourselves tons of grace. And that's me too.
Mhm.
But I will say that I look at my days and my weeks in a much different way. Instead of reacting, I'm very intentional about how I want to feel and thinking about what my values are, and then thinking about what activities are going to happen in the week to ensure that I feel that way in a regular cadence, and putting those things on my calendar first and then filling in everything else. Because I really believe, especially for women who are living full lives, running companies, running families, there's this idea that there's suddenly going to be a pause in the action and you're going to make this major change and life's going to all come together. And in my experience, it doesn't happen that way. It really is about having the courage to start making consistent micro shifts in how you show up in your day to day over time, and trusting that that will yield a more intentional and fulfilled life. I'll also add in there that having a morning routine is has been an extremely powerful aspect of my transformation. I choose to meditate in the morning. I know you like to give your guests practical ways that they can actually practice. I think people really underestimate even 5 minutes in the morning. When we stumble out of bed and we right away tune into technology or flip on the news, I think women give their power away by doing that. And by choosing to start my day in an intentional way that is pouring into myself, for me, it's quiet and slow. It really sets the tone for how I am going to move through my day, and also the energy that I'm going to share with other people I encounter in my day.
No, I love that. I found once I've created a more like daily routine when it comes to my mornings, it's just amazing to see that the tone that it sets and the perspective that you can take on for the rest of the day. So if someone is looking to create a morning routine, because I know my morning routines probably looks different from yours, and for all the listeners, what would you say is the best way for people to find a way to cultivate more presence to kick off their day?
I really try to avoid the word should. And I feel like a lot of women come to me and they're like, I should meditate. And they say
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't, that only you know. So a way to think about setting a morning routine, if you're having a lot of contrast in your life, if you're like, I feel stretched, I feel stressed, I don't feel like I'm showing up as a high vibe, high quality woman that I know I am, you could think about the quality that you want to cultivate in your days. Because, as Annie Dillard says, our days become our lives. And then you could just think about a corresponding activity to start your day that embodies that feeling that you're wanting to connect with. So if you've been feeling slack and lethargic and like, ugh, I just have no get up and go in my day, maybe a 5 minute walk, getting some sun, just getting outside, moving your body a little bit would be great for you. If you've been feeling the opposite, like, oh my gosh, I wake up and my brain is already planning for my meeting after lunch and it's just go. Maybe something like meditation would be absolutely lovely because you're looking to anchor yourself in more of a grounded, peaceful energy. So I think it's very personal. And I think that it's important that women realize your morning routine gets to evolve with you and the seasons of your life. And it gets to be something that supports and energizes your life, not something that feels punishing or like something that's on your to do list.
Hmm. I love that. I want to highlight, underline, exclamation mark, and add some exclamation points about what you were saying of what is the state that you want to cultivate more into your life and what's an activity that would best support that. I think that's a great way to be able to tune in to what your morning routine will be versus what everybody and their mother says about is the best way to have a morning routine. So I love, love, love that. And you talked about meditation as something that you incorporate in your day. And I would love to open up the space for you to talk about the show up as your best self meditation. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yes. Oh, thank you. So I think meditation has a lot of stigmas, and in working with a lot of high functioning, busy moms and women who are living full lives, I think it's something they gravitate to, but feel either intimidated by, or like, mama doesn't have time for that. And so I think it's wonderful to be guided sometimes for women who are always creating structure and planning and guiding others. I wanted to create a gift where women could just experience a short guided meditation, which I hope might just be an appetizer into a deeper practice. But just everyone has 5 minutes. You can get up 5 minutes earlier. And my idea for this meditation is there's a profound shift when women look at showing up more calm and intentional and energized in their lives, and it not only being about them, but about being a better version of ourselves and sharing that with especially the people we care about the most. Otherwise, really, what's it all about? So, with that meditation, it's an opportunity to pause, think about who that woman is, and start your day with that really intentional energy.
Yes, that's amazing. You can feel your passion about how important that you believe this meditation is. So, everyone, go and try it on. Go and look in the description of this video or in the show notes to get your gift from Whitney. And I know you have a podcast too. Do you briefly want to talk about the Electric Ideas podcast?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I am. Electric Ideas is such a gift to me. I was grateful to have you on the show, and it's all about lighting women up with a new sense of possibility. And it really comes from what we've been talking about in this conversation. It came from a time where I went through a period in my life where I felt like I was in a murky middle. I felt stuck. I felt like I was focused on being stuck. And I explore all kinds of ways for women to open up the aperture and step into a more fulfilled and present and joyful way of being. So I love it. It's very much for women by women. I only interview women. So I'd love for anybody to check it out.
Yes. We're going to leave all the links for you to tune in. And if they're loving you, they're wanting to learn how to work with you and to go deeper with you, what's the best way for them to connect?
Sure. My website is myelectricideas.com. The podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you stream. And right now, I play the most on Instagram. So you can find me. My handle is at Whitney Woman.
Yes, we're going to leave all those links. Thank you so much for coming on, Whitney. It's just been such a pleasure connecting with you and learning more about your story. So thank you.
Oh, it's a delight. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I'll upload a new video on Thursday. See you in the next one. Bye.